I should actually have some backdrop music to do this, honestly. We should be dancing as we're doing this because this is really good. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on when and where you're watching this Facebook Live. This is or YouTube Live, depending where you're watching this. This is the voice and the face of Dr. Tolu Olabinton, Living Spring Family Medical Health Center, where we help our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. Every time I come on, I say I'm excited, but I generally stay excited. So I am excited to have on our guest today. She's not only a friend, she's an infectious disease specialist. She's an amazing woman of God. She's double board certified. She's a smarty pants. She's a B&B, beauty and brain. So, Dr. Tina Agbaosi, we are honored to have you on here talking about how bacteria actually helps your body work. How are you doing, Doc?
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here with my beloved sister and friend. Yes, I'm Dr. Tina Agbaosi. I'm an infectious disease specialist, and I'm excited for the topic.
All right, awesome, awesome. Now, for those of you who are watching live, you know what to do. Hashtag live. If you're watching replay, hashtag replay. We're gonna have an interesting conversation today on how bacteria, help. But before we go, Doc, can you tell us a little bit more? I know you talked about who you are, but share a little bit more on that. Why you do what you do? What was the interest with infectious disease?
Okay. Very early in medical school, I had some I guess I'll call it traumatic experience, and that had kind of helped me, directed me in this path later on in my career. I realized that infection was very critical in people's outcome whenever they come to the hospital for whatever reason. So people come to the hospital for surgery, they come to the hospital for diabetes, they come to the hospital for a broken knee or broken hip. But infection would play a significant role if they would be getting back home to their family. And when I was in my clinical year in medical school, I remember very vividly in Luth, Lagos University Hospital, in Ward E, a pediatric patient. She had this interesting disease, hair sprung, and it was meant to be a complicated surgery, but she actually did well. The surgery she came out of surgery. It was successful, and we're really excited. Very sweet mother, very young child. And then a couple of days after, things started turning really south. And it was one infection after the other, and it was a really, really traumatizing period for all of us because we're all rooting for that child and the mother. So that was one of the cases that kind of helped me see that infection is not something you joke with. But the beautiful thing about it, which is what motivates me now, is when you do get it early and you have the right drug, with the right drug, you can overcome it. And that is what keeps me excited. I love what I do. I would do it free of charge any day, anytime. And it's always exciting when I come see a patient. A lot of times when they come in septic, really sick on consultation, they are hardly able to recognize anyone, even their family members. They're upturned, and it just gives me so much.
You are saying big English, so you are turned there.
Oh, okay. As in, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. As in, their eyes are rolled back. They are sleepy, not because they are really sleepy, but because their mental status is diminished. As in, they don't recognize. They are confused. I think that's the word. They are confused, and then a few days later, when you get it right, they are up, they are alert, and they are talking with you, and they don't even remember what just happened, and they could easily have died. And so that just gives me joy, and it keeps me coming back to work every day just to see that happen over and over again.
I love it.
Yes,
I love it. The drug to fix the bug. You're a drug bug. You're a bug.
I'm a bug killer. I love my bugs, but I love to kill them. I love to learn everything about them, and I love to kill them. But that's not what we're talking about today. So like I was saying, I love what I do, and it's just a bonus that I get paid to do it.
Mm.
I would do it for free because I love the bacteria. I love all of them, but what I love even more is killing them.
Killing bacteria. Okay.
I
Now
love,
we're talking.
I
We're
love
talking today about good
we're
bacteria,
talking
dude.
about the yes, the villains are the ones that drive me.
So there are bad bacteria and there's good bacteria. But for
Absolutely.
context, doc,
Mhm.
where is bacteria? Because sometimes when I talk to patients, I'm like, bacteria is everywhere. They're like, what do you mean? So where's bacteria, like in the sphere of things? Like, we're humans walking around going to work, but where is bacteria, so we're aware, not petrified, but aware?
They are everywhere. Literally everywhere. And you know the funny thing, this might scare you or your listeners. You may actually be more bacteria than human.
Oh my gosh, that's creepy.
I'm serious, literally. So there's this human microbe project. You know, they did the human genome project. So they're doing the human, I think I don't know, I think it's called HMP, but I don't remember the full name. So they are testing to see they're trying to analyze the DNA, like the basic component of bacteria within us and around us. So in the past, scientists actually had said that there are about a ratio of 100 to 1 bacterial cells versus human cells in you. Later on, they pared it down to 10 to 1. But now there's a contest going on that may be 1 to 1. But I think the ratio is somewhere between 10 to 1 versus 1 to 1 bacterial cell versus human cell in you moving around. So you literally are they say, there's a word that is, I think they describe it as a supra human. So you are an organism that is carrying a bunch of other organisms.
I'm Christian and ghosting me. I just carry bacteria with me where I go. That's all. That's all.
They're everywhere and they are very useful, and that's one thing that actually something that excites me these days. Apart from my overarching love for infectious disease, there's this very tiny niche of infectious disease that is getting me really excited these days. Is how we can now study bacteria not just as individual components or individual organism, but as a community, as a family.
Mm,
And so
mm.
that gives us a lot of information, much more than we used to be able to uh, uh,
Use bacteria.
observe. Yes, just isolating them and studying them one by one. So now we can observe them and study them as huge communities, thousands and millions of them at a time. So that's wonderful. So
Wow, that's awesome, and I'm glad we're talking about the good, which we already said you like to kill the
the
villain
bad
bacteria,
ones,
but
yes.
the good bacteria that stays with us, habitates with us. So let's talk about what exactly are good bacteria and why are they important for our health.
Okay. So most of us know about the bad bacteria, and that's what we're all afraid of. We're constantly sanitizing and using hand sanitizer, wiping down, washing, and all of that. And we know the kind of disease that they cause. And I already told you why they motivate me every day to wake up and go to work. But there's a lesser known bacteria population that is the good bacteria that have been strategically placed in us to actually help us, to help optimize the way we live. And they most of us would know that there's a lot of bacteria within our gut, right? But then that's not the only place they are. They are in our gut, they're in our mouth, they are in our private areas inside. They are and even recently, with all of the newer technology, they are discovering that even the previously described as sterile parts of the body may not be that sterile after all. So,
Wow.
yes. So the good bacteria help optimize how we live, like I said earlier, and hopefully we go along, we talk about how they help us with that, and it's really interesting, really interesting.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
We
Awesome. Awesome.
we literally need them. We literally need them. Yes.
All right. So how do they help? Let's start with digestion.
Mhm.
So for some people watching, like, ew, there's bacteria in me. Should I do a deep cleanse or something? For someone watches, like, okay, how do bacteria in the body help with digestion?
Okay. So one way they help with digestion. Okay, and I'll start by saying why are they even necessary? It's a relationship we would describe as a symbiosis. So that's a really big word, but what it just means is it's a win-win situation. So the bacteria love to be in us because they need us just as much as need them to be in us because they help us. So and why did I go backpedal a little bit to say that is, so the digestion that they're helping us with is them literally trying to feed out of our food, and in the process break down our food so that we are not able to absorb. So there's more than enough. There's an abundance of the our food material that is going through our GI system. So they help break it down so they can have a little bit of nutrition. And bacteria, by the way, I don't know, I don't know, remember if I said this, they are just one-celled organism, okay? They're just a single-celled organism. So recently they talking about bacteria outside of the body because they are still helpful too. Like when you hear about oil spills, for instance, is the bacteria, the microorganisms in nature, they're the ones who help break all of that to restore nature back into balance. Yes.
Yeah.
And there was, I think 2016, there was a discovery in Japan, in Osaka. Scientists discovered a bacteria that is actually able to eat through plastic. So that may just be God providing a solution to some of this plastic pollution problem we're having.
Wow.
And so that's like a new discovery. And they're proposing that this may be helpful if they're able to study it some more to see how it's able to eat through plastic. So that's basically, if you can have that, if you can have a mental picture of that, they eating through our food because they are so tiny is helping break the food into smaller pieces, the same way they decompose outside of your body. So it's like breaking down your food so your body is able to absorb the minerals and vitamins. And okay, on the other hand, also their byproduct of nutrients to us also, like vitamin K, vitamin B12, are byproducts that
Wow.
they make. So their excrement is vitamins to us. Maybe that's a little dramatic.
It's all protein, I guess. It's all protein. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. But this is good to know. So my next question, and this is probably off topic, I'm like, so how do we keep the good ones? And how do we increase how much of the good ones we have? Any tips on that? Or are there foods that help with that?
Yes. Okay, so I would talk about um foods that help keep the good bacteria. But before I even go into that, I want to talk about what is common and what everybody seems to know about because it's been on all over for a couple of years now. Before we talk about the foods that help increase the good
Okay.
bacteria, so people know about probiotics. Okay, probiotics are actually bacteria, living bacteria that people take with the goal of replenishing their good bacteria in their body. So it's still the jury is still out there. What I tell my patients usually when I prescribe probiotic is, I don't know if it will help, but I don't think it would hurt. And especially when they're going home with antibiotics, and I think we might talk about that later. So probiotics are literally living organisms that we take with the goal that they would replenish or help increase the good bacteria population in our gut. Okay. On the other hand, the foods, okay, that you can take that would help increase the um, good bacteria in your gut, these are called prebiotics. Okay. Are you still there? Did I lose her? Oh, I think I lost her. What do I do now? Yeah, I lost you.
My computer just said we gotta restart. I'm like, seriously, like live, really?
Oh, really? I'm sorry. I was like, what do I do? Did I
No,
do something?
it didn't even give me a head start. It just said I gotta restart. It's a problem with the computer. I'm like, really? But anyway, okay. So we're talking about probiotics, right? So bacteria that we ingest
Yeah,
with buy. So let's
actual
go ahead.
bacteria, yes.
Mhm. All right. So probiotics. What about prebiotics?
Yes.
What are your
So
thoughts on that?
prebiotics, I was just talking about that when I realized that you were stiff. Like, uh-oh.
I hope it was a good post. Anyway, let's
It was
continue.
a good pose. I can promise you it was a good pose. Nothing weird. So prebiotics, on the other hand, are a substance, usually carbohydrate substance that you take that, for lack of a better way to describe it, is food for the bacteria that helps them populate. So you see the difference?
Mm.
So probiotics is you ingesting the bacteria. Prebiotics is you giving the bacteria food. So basically, it's not giving yourself food, because that those kinds of prebiotics, in its um, basic state, okay, are not digestible by us. That's actually what makes it prebiotic, meaning it
Okay.
has to go through our gut. The acid don't affect it. The Our enzymes don't hydrolyze it. Meaning break it down. Sorry for using big words.
No, we're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then it gets to the bacteria, and they are the ones who can kind of. I'm doing this with my hand. I know you can see me. They can break it down and eat it up. So those basic, I don't know, you if you go to health food store, you may see things like inulin, pectin, inulin powder, stuff
Mm.
like that. So but those substances are present, or these fibers, special kinds of fiber, for instance, are present in our foods, okay, in certain foods. So foods like garlic, like onions, like asparagus. I think they describe avocado, bananas also. Okay. But obviously you have to eat large quantities of it. I've discovered that researching online, that most of the ones you find in the store that are already kind of isolated, not the way you have protein powder. So they've kind of
Mhm.
extracted the inulin and put it in a powder or whatever form for you to just eat it up. They are gotten from chicory root. I don't know what that is. I didn't have time to Google to see what the chicory root is. I was going to, but I forgot. But I guess if you're someone who would normally eat asparagus, garlic, onions, you are getting some of that already.
Oh,
Okay,
good.
so that's good. So
Okay. Thank
so
you
those
so much. This is a wealth of information. So we are eating bacteria when we eat when we take probiotics.
yes,
Um, and then prebiotics help feed it. And the more it looks like healthier foods help promote that balance. But are there
yeah.
foods that we should avoid because they grow bad bacteria? What would you say?
Mm, I don't believe there is, but that's a question that I would have to do some more researching,
Okay.
because I'm not aware of any specific food, but I know that there are specific habits, and there are specific uh, drugs that
Mm,
can cause it. But I'm not aware if there's anything in nature like
okay.
food. It's possible though. Uh, it's possible, but this is just me making
General. Okay.
hypothesis
Okay.
that maybe if you're on a diet that is mostly hyper processed, okay,
Yes. Yeah.
so it may not necessarily be that it's killing the good bacteria, but if it's not if it's not creating an environment for the good bacteria to flourish, every living organism have a life cycle. They will eventually die off, and then you may end up with in a what we call a dysbiotic state. So symbiosis is when there's a balance, your body and the good bacteria are working together. Dysbiosis is when the good bacteria are no longer in balance, and the harmful ones may be taking over.
Mm,
And yes, so
okay.
I would, if I was going to make a guess, because processed food is all around harmful, I would say maybe cut down, eat more fresh, and all of that. But that's kind of out of my scope.
Okay, you see her, the doctor said limit processed food because you're probably shifting the bios
Yes, yes.
on biosis. So don't allow symbiosis. So limit processed foods. That's very, very important.
Yes.
All right. My next question, Doc, is on when we have too much. Are there downsides of having too, like, what happens when you have too much or too little bacteria in our bodies? What happens and what are things that you've seen,
Okay.
or based on what studies and things like that?
I wouldn't say too much or too little bacteria, because it depends on what the kind of bacteria we're talking about. So we're talking about the good bacteria,
Okay.
because in general, there's a balance that is constantly going on inside of you. We all have some amount of harmful bacteria in us, okay,
Mm,
all the time. But your immune system is constantly keeping it under check. And part of that immune system is the good bacteria. So there's a if you can imagine, if your intestine is a tube, for instance, the
mm,
inner lining of your intestine, within the tube, the good bacteria, for lack of a, I just want to be very dramatic here. Just imagine them; they're like a wall of defense lining the outside of your intestinal walls. So harmful. So as long as there's a good amount of the helpful bacteria in your in the gut lining, they serve as one layer of defense before your own human cells, before you now
mm.
talk about your blood vessels and your tissue, before for harmful things to get through, to get into your organs and cause damage, right? So the that balance needs to stay that way, because when the helpful bacteria decrease in number and the harmful ones overtake, then it creates a state of dysbiosis, which is imbalance. And that dysbiosis is like a spectrum that can lead into a disease state. Um, so it's been found, they've found, scientists have shown a connection between uh, um, okay, and the one thing they have found also is not so much about the quantity of
Mm.
good bacteria, but the variety. So you
Ah,
see, everybody talks about diversity in human life. Like, diversity is good in a social environment. Diversity also is good within the microbiome, which is the community of bacteria. So the more diverse the population of different communities working together, the more beneficial they are to the individual that is hosting them.
okay.
So they found that decreased diversity has been associated with certain diseases like diabetes and a bunch of others, but they are not sure yet. There's still research yet to be done
Mm.
if there's a causal relationship or if it's a consequence. Meaning, is it because they are diabetic that there's less variety, or is it the less variety that predispose them to so cause
Okay.
versus consequence? Yes.
I see. I see. So, let's talk antibiotics briefly. So, can antibiotics harm our beneficial bacteria, and if so, how? And I say this
Absolutely.
because sometimes we have conversations. People come in for viral infections, and we're like, "Oh, they're like, I need antibiotic." And we're like, "No, no, you don't, because it can cause harm." Could we speak to potential harms from antibiotics for our beneficial bacteria, especially when it's not necessary?
Absolutely. I started off by saying that I love to kill
Yes, you do.
harmful bacteria, yeah. But at the same time, my machine guns and my bullets are almost just as dangerous as the bacteria that they are killing. So you have to, it's a delicate balance there, because absolutely 100% yes. Antibiotics is the number one, in my opinion, a significant destroyer of your
Mm.
helpful bacteria inside of you. So when you do not need antibiotics, so what happens is there's something we call risk versus benefit balance. So every doctor always, that's what Dr. Tolu was speaking about. Every doctor always weighs the risk versus the benefit. So
Mm.
when you are really sick and we know you have a high density of harmful bacteria that are hurting you and going to cause a lot of damage, then we use the antibiotics because we know that it's going to decrease the harmful bacteria population.
Mm,
And in the long run, it may cause a little bit of the helpful bacteria to die off too, but we know that the harm that the evil bacteria is going to cause will be much more damaging in the long run than the helpful bacteria that gets lost when you take antibiotics appropriately. Okay, but when you take antibiotics inappropriately, meaning you have a normal volume of your hurtful bacteria that the good bacteria is keeping a delicate balance suppressing, and then you go
mm,
ahead and you take antibiotics unnecessarily, you end up killing off the ones that are actually there helping guard and protect you, and it leaves you exposed and bare. And I already talked about how it can predispose you to a whole host of infections, notably Clostridium difficile, which is a very well known infection in the gut from taking antibiotics, diarrhea that is never ending. And I tell my patients all the time, the best way to treat C. diff is not to get C. diff. Okay, so
mm,
that's
mm.
one thing you have to know. And then recent studies are also showing that antibiotics use may be connected to H. pylori, which is Helicobacter pylori. It's one of the bacteria that have been connected to peptic ulcer disease, what you
Okay.
call, yeah,
Yeah,
ulcers.
I see.
So indiscriminate use of antibiotics can predispose you to all of this. And also, we just talked about all the dysbiosis and even autoimmune diseases also are being linked to the microbiome. So these are things that you do not need to be on antibiotics. You absolutely don't get it. It's poison.
Do you recommend? So I see this a lot. With the yeast infections, someone's on antibiotic and they get yeast infections. Those are usually minor compared to C. diff. But do you typically recommend a probiotic when people are on antibiotics?
So
Um,
what I do with when people, I usually would recommend antibiotics to patients who are going to be on antibiotics for weeks
okay.
to treat infections like osteomyelitis, bone infections, or
Mm,
bloodstream infections for weeks. But certain patients are predisposed to secondary complications from antibiotic use. And what I do is I just recommend, and I said, do you love yogurt? If you like yogurt, then double up on yogurt already. I wouldn't tell them if they're just going to be on antibiotic for a few days, go out of your way and go buy probiotic.
probiotics. Okay.
Yes. And also, that also has its own dealings that we don't even want to get into right now. So everything is just a delicate balance. Yeast infection is a different, it's a different spectrum of disease, which is the secondary. It's also due to imbalance,
Hmm.
but it's if that's a fungus. So that it's easy. A lot of times, you just tell the patient to take a single dose of diflucan, um, especially if they're diabetic. I do that sometimes.
Okay. So someone's asking a good question. I'm sure I think she missed it when we did this earlier. She said, "What is the role of probiotics in keeping a balance in the gut biome?"
Okay, so probiotics have been shown to be beneficial, but there are still a lot of people on one side that say they don't really help. So what I tell my patients is it doesn't hurt, but it might help, especially when they're going on antibiotics.
Okay.
Um, there are a lot of the reason why the jury is out there is because we just talked about variety, right? In
Hmm.
the gut, we just talked about variety in the gut. The variety of the bug is important, but most of the probiotics are only about three. I think about just a handful. You can count in the fingers of your hand how many uh, um, bacteria they are being cultured that are commercially available. Do you understand? So
Right.
you drinking, and then some of them are for specific conditions, so to speak. So some specific bacteria that are cultured and are sold in that capsule can be helpful in this for certain conditions, so
Okay.
to speak. So until the variety of bacteria that are now available commercially that can help repopulate the gut
Hmm.
into a more original status, it kind of the jury is still kind of out there.
Out there.
It
Okay.
might be helpful if you are in this biosis, if you are in if you are in a state where you already like taking antibiotics, but taking it the way a lot of people just take it as like a vitamin, it's still kind of,
You're okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm kind of, yeah.
So, Gloria, good question to ask. I think it's situational. Definitely consult with your physician to discuss a good one
Exactly.
that's for you. I tend to do it for those who are on antibiotics, those who eat a lot of sweets, sweet like or like sugar drink. Oh, yeah. I'm like, okay, let's have you on this, and I tell them get one that's pre and pro that has both. And some say they feel better on it. Some so it's in an individual approach as well. Now, Doc, it's 7 o'clock. Wow, time flew.
Oh
And I
wow.
have people who are wondering, I know it went by really quickly. And people are wondering, where do I find this doctor? I like how she answers questions. She's been very informative. Dr. Tina Agbaosi, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. These days, that's where I'm parked most of the time. Um, and yeah, that's my LinkedIn
So I
handle.
have I have put it at the bottom so everyone has a way to contact her, reach out to her. She's pretty engaging, and she's in Memphis. So I'm sorry, she's not in Texas, but she's not here. But she's in the U.S. So you can reach out to her through LinkedIn. But Doc, thank you so much for spending your time with us and answering questions. I really appreciate you big time. Sending you virtual hugs. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. This was so interesting and so fun hanging out with you.
Awesome, awesome.
And
And
thank
thank
you
you.
all. Yeah, thank you all
We,
for.
we had people who showed up. So thank you,
Okay, that's good.
Lavanya. Real good to see you. Dr. Una was here. Thank you for joining.
Oh,
Bernard.
really?
Mhm. Um,
Hi, Dr. Oda.
Gloria was here as well. Thank you so much
Hi,
for asking.
Gloria.
Auntie Bosun, thank you so much for stopping by. And Tanisha, always good to see you as well. And as always, everyone, sharing is caring. Forward this to people who would like to engage in this conversation. And as always, if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome, thorough, and compassionate family physician in the Mansfield, Dallas, Texas area to help you live long and well, I am she. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks, Doc. I'll talk to you soon, okay?